Villagehood Australia acknowledges the Ghana people, past, present, and future. We acknowledge the culture and that they are the traditional custodians of the land we are podcasting from today. We would also like to acknowledge all First Nations people across the country. Happy listening, everyone. Hi everyone, this is Dinah here from Villagehood Australia, and today I've got the pleasure to have Julie Borninkhof from PANDA, and today we're going to talk about postnatal depression and anxiety. And hello Julie, how are you?
Hi, I'm really well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast with me. I'm so excited about this. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for such a long time now, so I'm very happy that you find the time to be with us.
Oh, most definitely. It's important to be able to get amongst community and have these conversations.
Yeah, especially during this climate of COVID. So it's
good
to be able to talk about postnatal depression, mental health in general. So Julie, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about PANDA and the organization so our viewers and listeners understand what it is that PANDA is and what it is that you do in the organization?
Of course. So PANDA is an amazing organisation, and I don't just say that as the CEO of it. I truly believe that. My background, just as a sort of starting point too, is I'm a clinical psychologist by trade, and in my time of working with people at a grassroots level, I was also referring to PANDA. So it's kind of a nice full circle that I've come in now, being the CEO of PANDA. So I've experienced it as a referral source. I haven't used it, thankfully. I didn't need to, but I've definitely referred friends and clients to it historically. PANDA is this amazing organisation that was born 37 years ago this year. So in a time when the health sector and the mental health sector didn't understand or recognise that there was any such thing as, at that time, postnatal depression or anxiety, PANDA was formed at the kitchen table of two women who came together and shared their experience after they'd been connected up by a child maternal health nurse and said, you guys sound like you're experiencing something similar, and we know that talking about it amongst your peers is really beneficial. And so they got connected up and had a conversation around a kitchen table about their experience and what they were experiencing within the system. And then as a result of that, they held their first community event, which I spoke last year to the founder of PANDA. They expected a handful of women to turn up to, and they ended up having to drag in chairs from the neighbourhood hall. And they were so overwhelmed with women wanting to come and understand what it was that they were talking about. And PANDA's just grown from there. So we have a really rich history, which is very much been built on the journey of the people that use our services and supports. So we started off developing resources and being an advocate around the health and wellbeing of women after they gave birth to their babies. And over the years, our services have just evolved and grown. Our helpline this year is 10 years old. So we were funded by the Commonwealth Government. So it's a 10-year birthday for us, which is so very exciting. And we've been able to just continue to grow to meet demand. But we do that by listening to the people that access our services. And then we fold in more and more support. So now, as you know, we're not just about postnatal depression. We now talk about perinatal anxiety and depression. So we talk about the antenatal period, which is during pregnancy, that 9 months, a really important time of development, and then postnatal, so the first 12 months of the bub's life. And we squash those both together, and we're there for people through that pregnancy and first year of baby's life. We deliver our helpline, which is nationally available as a free service where anyone can call us between the hours of 9 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's Monday to Friday, although we've got the next 20 weeks we're doing Saturday delivery as well, which is really exciting. And we also do lots of education and training for health professionals. We work in partnership to raise the profile of people's experience in this space. We do research. We do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about, the stage of pregnancy, because speaking with many mothers, what I've realized is that depression can happen during pregnancy due to the hormones imbalance and all that. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know that it's something, it's not that it's new, but it's new in the sense that people are starting to talk about it more. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that? And also, what are the signs that we should be, looking for? Like if we feel that something is not quite right, if you could tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Of course. So, as we know, and, as is now scientifically proven, the pregnancy period is a really tumultuous time where you've got lots of hormonal changes, you've got lots of psychological changes in terms of preparing and thinking about the kind of environment you want to bring your baby into, the kind of parent you're going to be based on the history you have with your own family of origin. There are so many factors that influence us then. And, as you said, there are, brain chemical changes that occur in that period. And whether you come into your pregnancy with a history of having had a previous mental vulnerability, or whether your family has mental illness, whether you've experienced a trauma or, violence during your life to date, each of those things have, the capacity to heighten your experience and to bring on and develop depression and anxiety, or a number of other mental vulnerabilities during that period. In saying that, we don't ever want people to feel scared that that's going to happen, because whilst 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 dads experience anxiety and depression during the perinatal period, we know that people can be really healthy and well during that space. But what's really normal is to feel displaced, to question, especially with COVID in the mix, to question the kind of world you are bringing your child into, to feel a sense of tearing and separation from your work life role. I think we often feel as women that it's wrong to feel this tussle between who you are in a workplace and who you're going to be as a mother, and that's quite hard to reconcile. So changing identity in the pregnancy period is really important to manage. But ultimately, if people are experiencing, for anxiety, a really heightened sense of worry, they're unable to turn off their racing thoughts, they feel like they are, worn out and, stressed all of the time, a bit like a rubber band that's been wound up too often, feeling upset tummies, irritability, any of those things, that can be a sign of anxiety. And for men, we know that they may not describe it the same way, but can be feeling more anger and feel quicker to react when they're feeling overwhelmed. And on the other end of the spectrum, if somebody is feeling more depressed, then you're more likely to feel bogged in your mood, not able to snap yourself out and see positives in life, feeling like you just want to bury yourself away and that it's all too hard. Again, you can have physical reactions which are about that upset tummy and feeling like your whole system's out of whack, and lots of those thoughts around perhaps I'm not going to be a good mum, or catastrophizing and thinking the worst of a situation. As I often say, it's like you've got your poo colored glasses on and everything looks awful. So there but again, it's different for every individual.
And I guess you talk about that shift, that identity shift that happens during pregnancy, which I've experienced myself, because I was like not in a sales role, but like more like in a relationship building role where you kind of go and follow up with clients and be with them. And then when I became pregnant, after 6 months, I was more in a nesting space where I just wanted to be quiet and calm and not so much like out there and talking, and I just wanted to be at home and preparing the bedroom for the baby and all that. So I didn't have that kind of like eagerness to go and be out there. I just wanted to actually stay in and be with myself almost. So I remember experiencing that as true. And someone I remember saying that there's a reason why it takes 9 months to give birth, because it prepares you to be,
most definitely. Yeah, and we're all from caveman times. We most definitely had a 9-month period of where we were able to make the family unit safe, where we were able to find shelter, where we were able to find all of those resources that we needed. But it's funny, I'm on the other end of the spectrum, whereby as a leader I got pregnant, and I pretty much worked through to the day I squeezed out my daughter, and I had no view of, I wasn't a maternal person, and really feared having to be maternal, and it wasn't until she was laid on me that something clicked and I went, okay, there it is. So I think our experiences are so very different,
exactly.
And that's all right. It's all perfect. I think media sets us up to feel like we're failing because they provide a very clear and idealistic picture of what it is to be pregnant and what it is to have a family unit with a baby in it. And I think quite often we experience on both our helpline and the people that complete the mental health checklist really does show us that that's not realistic. That there's ups and downs, and some days we love it and some days we don't, and that's all okay.
Yeah. So actually on that, would you be able to tell us about, what's kind of, and I hate using the word normal, let's say what's kind of expected, and what could happen, what are the good things and the things that are not as good as we would hope them to be. So we understand, from the moment we give birth, what it is that happened to us. And also I really want to talk about the bonding with the baby, or the absence of bonding. Because personally, I didn't feel any sort of magical bonding. I feel like, that's also an expectation that society sets on us, that all of a sudden, all that instinct is going to kick in and you're going to feel that bond. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not feeling any of that, so I'm probably a crap mom to start with. That's kind of like that mentality that I went in because I didn't feel that bond. So can we talk a little bit about that, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, of course, most definitely. Look, and I think, starting at that bond space, the way in which we bond with our children, in the same way we bond with our partners, I think is so influenced in how we ourselves were parented. And, often at PANDA, I say the reason why I do the work I love to do is because we're creating the parents of the future in supporting people right now. And I think it's really important to, again, remember that whilst, kids who experience trauma and kids who are in really unhealthy relationships, yes, you can wreck them. But, in terms of nurturing your child and doing near enough's good enough parenting, a secure attachment, which we're all aiming for, can happen in many different ways. So I think first and foremost, we need to kind of debunk the myth that you can only build a secure attachment if you have this amazing sense of nurturance, and that you love your child unconditionally, and that you get this, wonderful amount of time with them, and, you get an extended, maternity leave from your work and all that. None of that stuff has been, proven to necessarily impact on how you attach with your child. It's about, feeling and trusting in your skills, even if those skills are still developing. In terms of going back to how you are within your pregnancy period and then into the birth, I think, again, it depends on the kind of person you've been throughout your life. You don't come into a pregnancy and no pathway into a pregnancy is the same. You don't come into a pregnancy without dragging your whole life in, the hypothetical bag of life into that period. So for some people, they've fought, course after course or cycle after cycle of IVF to have a baby, and they get to their pregnancy and they're told they're pregnant and they don't have that maternal click or paternal click either for dads. And then they feel completely shattered because they've fought so hard for this baby, and then they judge themselves both in that pregnancy period, and that impacts on how they connect with the experience of being pregnant and the experience of their community and who supports them through that space. In the same breath, you know, we have people who, you know, got pregnant very easily and have always, you know, taken things, you know, coasted through life, and they get to that space and all of a sudden life hits them and they start taking it very seriously, and they feel this overwhelming sense of responsibility in being a parent and predicting how their world's going to be. And I think, you know, you hear from PANDA quite often in the media we do and the messaging we do that near enough's good enough. And what we find is that people can either be over controlled in how they want their world to be and how they want their birth to be, and all of those things, and that just sets people up for failure, because ultimately there is so small a percentage of what we can control in our day-to-day lives, and especially going into a birth experience. You know, you're in a hospital system where there are so many factors that impact on how you give birth, that, you know, it's hard to control. So near enough's good enough is a really important principle. And, you know, people who go in with a very clear view of how it's going to be and have their birth plan and those kind of things often feel, when they come out the other side, that it wasn't what they wanted it to be, and feel really upset about the experience of having a baby because it didn't measure up to what their friends or their family or their hopes and dreams had mapped out for them. So I think, you know, again, it's normal to have trouble adjusting to being pregnant. You know, we know that in the same way we say 1 in 5 women, you know, experience anxiety or depression in that period. We also know that it goes beyond just anxiety and depression, and that people struggle with their body image during that process. They struggle with energy levels that then impact on the way they live their life and engage with their friends and their families or their sporting pursuits. And all of that can impact on their health and well-being at that time. We also know that the health system of which PANDA is a part, you know, support people in a fairly specific kind of way as they step through their journey of care to have their babies. And people's needs don't necessarily go in a sequential order. So, you know, finding the right services and supports can be really difficult. And then it's really different for dads. You know, dads have more trouble, I guess, preparing for the birth of their child because they're not growing the child themselves, you know, and because they have to maintain often their day-to-day life in, you know, very much the same way. And then when they get to being a dad, they don't trust their skills and abilities because, you know, they were sort of vicariously involved, and that really does impact on their health and well-being also.
I guess there is an expectation that the mom will take on and know what to do. And I remember, you know, talking to many mothers and talking about that, is that, you know, the partner, the male partner will say, well, I'm on the passenger seat here. You know, you're on the driving seat, so you need to tell me what to do. And I remember like not having a clue about what I was doing. Like I'm in the driving seat, but I'm actually wearing a blind mask. So I'm like, okay, I'm driving this car, but I can't see anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, where are we going? So I guess maybe there's an opportunity to involve the dad in the pregnancy. So there is an equal understanding of you know, we both in this, and I don't know any more than you. I may be like carrying the child and giving birth to the child, but I'm on the same level as you are, and you need to trust your gut as well as I need to trust mine, and as a team we can work it out together, because I feel like this is where it gets hard, because when you feel that not only you have to keep this child alive and, you know, and feed him or her and make sure that he's okay, but also you have to explain to your partner what to do. It's too much responsibility on our shoulder, and that's probably what creates also a lot of anxiety and which can lead to more than that, because it's almost too much responsibility in a way. So what can you tell us about, you know, post-birth things that can be done to support the mom, but also if the mom is experiencing anxiety or depression, what it is that the partner can do to support her?
Look, I think it's really important first and foremost to understand that, you know, you can't kind of expect each other to see all of the signs and symptoms, because for many people they've never been in this situation before, and it's high stress regardless of whether you have mental illness or vulnerability or not. So I think, you know, making it okay for people to struggle, and that struggle's a normal part of it, and that you've kind of just got to muck in together and have the conversations and be real about what your experience is. You know, our data shows us, though, that 45% of men who undertake and complete our mental health checklist don't feel at all engaged in, you know, and feel disconnected from their baby, which is a significant number, you know, and whether that's because as a society we don't really make it okay to talk about the fact that for fathers, you know, it doesn't just happen magically, you know, and that it takes time to build trust and confidence, and you can still have a relationship that will grow and evolve without it being that sort of cataclysmic, oh, I'm a father, you know, there's nothing magical about it. And I think, again, you know, we, through the advocacy PANDA does, but also the media and the way that we talk about being a father, you know, again, we don't pay enough time really talking about the fact that, you know, becoming a father is not one that's paved in gold, in the same way becoming a mother isn't, you know, and that it's okay for you to not have all of the answers, because we know that, you know, predominantly and historically through generations, men have been seen as the providers and the fixers. And there's nothing more debilitating, and our callers tell us that there's nothing more debilitating to feel like than feeling like they can't fix or help their partner when they see them struggling. And often just us saying to dads, you don't have to fix it.
Yes.
You just have to be there. You know, you just have to be there and allow a conversation and the vulnerability that your partner is experiencing as a new mum to be okay, you know. And I think that as a society, especially in the Australian context, we all love to muck in and get in amongst it and help fix something. And sometimes we don't open up conversations if we don't think that we can fix it, or that if we don't think we can be an authority on it. And I think that, again, getting to a position where it's okay to just say, hey, you look like you're having a rough time, without knowing where you're going to go to in that conversation is really important. You know, and it's often through our callers that people say it was just that person saying to me, you look like you weren't going okay, that clicked with the fact that, you know what, I don't think I'm going okay, but I don't trust myself to trust that thinking I'm not okay is enough. But when that person said you don't look like you're going okay, then I need help now. So I think, you know, being okay with just having that, you know, simple message around are you going okay, without feeling you have to unravel it. And, you know, that's why, not that you can tell it behind me because my logo's back to front, but, you know, our concept for this year's Panda Week is around telling somebody who cares, you know, and somebody who cares can be a GP, it can be a family member, a friend, you know, it can be anyone. And you know, not feeling like they're going to have all the answers, but having a feeling that it's a problem shared.
Yeah, exactly. And also having a feeling that you're not alone in this. I think that's what's important. I remember when I experienced postnatal depression, it was hard for my husband because he didn't know what to do, and he didn't have the tools to help me because that was also new to him, you know. And as a man, as you said, you know, their role, they think they can fix everything, and that's what they believe in. And as you said, you know, he couldn't because he didn't have the tools. But he doesn't have to have the tools. He's not meant to have the tools.
Yeah.
And I guess when he understood that, because we went together to my first therapy session, because I wanted him to be part of this, because, you know, we're a team, you know. It's not just I'm the one experiencing postnatal depression, but that has an impact on the whole of the family. So it's important to involve your partner in this. So when we went to my first therapy session, you know, what the therapist told him is that your role is just to sit there and be there. And that's that.
Yep.
And actually it helped him feel less it was a bit of a relief for him, and therefore he became more comfortable with this, because he knew that he didn't have to sort it out. He didn't have to find the answers. All he needed is to be there and be with me, alongside me, and working together towards the solution with the help of the professionals.
Yeah.
And I guess that's my experience of it. And I think it's so important to involve your partner and to believe in this, because when you decide to have a child, or you decide to get married, or you don't need to be married to have a child, but when you decide to do this together, it's for the best and the worst. And the worst can happen, and here we go. And you need to be a team.
Most definitely, you know, and it's like, you know, I often, or when I worked clinically, I used to say to my clients, you know, when you try to figure out solutions by yourself to family problems, and often, you know, whilst somebody's experience of depression or anxiety is not as a result of the family, but the family, you know, has impacted it, or the unit or the relationship. When you ask somebody to fix a family problem by themselves, it's like giving them a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and say, now fix it, you know. And the reality is, you do have to be brave. You do have to be authentic and expose yourself to seek support, and just be open about, you know, how you're experiencing. And 9 times out of 10, when partners say, you know what, I'm having a really rough time and I reached out to PANDA today, what we hear back is that the partner said, thank goodness I knew something was wrong, and I have been so worried, you know, because they felt it. They knew it. They knew something was going on, but every time they said, hey, you okay? Their partner said, yeah, I'm fine. It's just struggling with the baby, or, you know. And so the partner, the dad, then started not trusting his flag receptors, you know, and he wasn't trusting what he was seeing, because she's saying she's fine, and he's thinking, no, she's not. So then not only is she not trusting her own flags, but he's not trusting his, which is a recipe for disaster. You know, and I think that's, you know, the beauty of relationships, whether it's a single mum with a baby, or whether it's a mum and a dad with their baby, or, you know, 2 same-sex couples and their baby. The beauty of a relationship is that it keeps growing, you know, and whether it's growing separately or together, it will only do that through exposing each other to the ups and the downs, you know, and the reality of it. So I think, you know, the piece that PANDA facilitates the most, other than getting people with mental illness into the right care and supporting them to seek GPs or mental health services in their area, is really about normalising people's experience, and letting them have the space to be able to trust in what they're feeling, and giving them some words to then have conversations with other people.
Yes. And I feel like, you know, the fact that you're able to call PANDA and just have the conversation. I remember calling you in the car, you know, whilst my baby fell asleep, because that was the moment I could actually have a conversation. And I remember calling and just having a chat and realizing, this is normal, although I really don't like the word, but this is to be expected. There's nothing wrong with this. There may be something wrong with me in a sense that I'm going through mental health, but it's kind of like it has happened to many other moms, and it will probably happen to many more moms. And there's something that I can do about it. So, and there's that sense, like that kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? That the fact that you can just that from your phone, you know, like you just can call and have that conversation. That it's so easy to just do that. And
it's no cost, you know, in terms of not, and I don't mean that in terms of us being a free service, because we are a free service, but, you know, there's no cost if you want to test out your thinking, because we're not your partner. You know, we're not your family. We're not your close friend group. We're very separate to that. And PANDA offers you that capacity to be able to have a deep and real conversation, or a conversation at any level that you're prepared for, without there being a cost to your family relationships. The only thing it can do is benefit it, because it's giving you insight.
Yeah. So what it is to expect for someone who will actually decide today to call you. So they ring the number. Do you have the number? I may put it on the...
Yeah, so the number is 1300 726 306. And we also have a really great mental health checklist for mums and dads and for carers that's on our website, which is available 24/7.
Yes. So, all right. So they decide to call that number. So what happens? Just so they kind of like are ready to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
I know.
So So in an ideal world, you ring that number and you get put straight through to somebody who has that initial contact with you. But I will flag that as a result of COVID and just general demand at this time of year, you may have to leave a message. But the reality is we will get back to you, if not today, very quickly tomorrow. So first and foremost, you will get through to somebody and they'll just do a quick check-in with you. So they'll ask you about risks. So, you know, are you feeling at risk? Are you safe? Is your baby safe? Really just because we want to create that space for you to be able to have a conversation. Then the team will ask a series of questions to get a read on how you're going. And they're fairly standard questions that support us in streaming you into the best appropriate care. And then we'll provide you with and go on a conversation with you, which is supportive and nurturing and very much talks about the things I am in terms of what is normal or expected, if you don't like the word normal, what other people who have experienced this feel like, you know, how to reframe some of the thinking and some of the fears and worries that people have, and what people can do about it. So quite often PANDA acts as a conduit to local services. So we have an amazing array of services that we connect people to, or we'll support people in just going to their GP the next day. And quite often what we do is say, you know, it would be a really good idea for you to go and talk to your GP about this. This is how you could talk about it. We'll give follow-up resources and information so that you've got the words to take, because quite often people call us and they don't understand how to talk about their experience. And that's really confronting because we're not used to that. And then we'll check back in with people usually the next day to make sure they've been to their GP. And if they need further referral support, we can do that. Once somebody's had that first phone call, we generally also provide them with tools and resources, and they may be fact sheets, they may be resources for services in their local area, and they're usually sent via SMS or email out to people. We note that sometimes people don't want stuff sent because of not feeling safe with their partner knowing or their family knowing, and we'll work with your individual needs around that. And then people might receive, if they're in an area where they're in a rural and remote community or where access to other services is an issue, we may do some repeated follow-up calls or offer for the caller to keep ringing us back, and do services that way over 5 calls or whatever. But in other cases, we'll try to connect people up with their local services.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And, you know, like we touch base on COVID a little bit before the podcast, and we talked about, you know, the impact of COVID on the mental health of both mothers and fathers. Do you have some numbers or some stats to share with us to understand that, you know, there's more that needs to be done, and maybe we need to be even more aware of the needs?
Most definitely. So PANDA's been quite vocal in advocating based on the numbers that have been coming through. So there are a few things for us that we've really identified, and that is that we have had a significant increase in the number of people reaching out to our services. And whilst we've not necessarily been able to match the rate of callers coming in, we have definitely provided a 20% increase in the calls and supports that we've offered community. And we've had to spread them out amongst callers, you know, so where we may have done more repeat calls to people to hold them and to make them feel like they're able to be connected to a service, we may have had to reduce the number of calls to our community, but we're still providing support and linkage. We've also done more in terms of community education and resource development to support people so we can provide that instead. We've also been able to increase the number of services. So we've had a 200% increase in the number of sessions and supports delivered by our volunteer community, because they are people with lived experience who understand the look and feel of what people are going through and are able to provide them with a very nuanced and refined support that they themselves have experienced. We know that the things that people are calling for are very different. So historically, we would have been supporting people who may have had a history of mental illness, or who may have been experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression for the first time. We're seeing a broad range of presentations now. So we don't just support people who are depressed and anxious. We're supporting people who feel like, they're suicidal. We're supporting people who have really erratic thinking styles and are more, post-birth experiencing psychotic symptoms. We are dealing with a whole range of presentations for people. The complexity of what we're seeing in terms of people needing us for a broader range of things is very relative to financial pressures, housing issues, partners being stood down from work, real fears about what the world will look like after COVID. When COVID first hit, we had a lot of very real and really sad concerns of people feeling like they didn't want to bring a baby into this world, and really questioning whether they wanted to be doing that. And that was really hard. But we've also seen a shift in the age of babies. So historically, if we compared to this time last year, we would have had 1 or 2 babies that were under 1 month of age across all of our callers per month. Now we know that 1 in 10 of our callers will have a baby under a month, and that is as a result of the lack of service access for people when they're discharged from the hospital. We know that people are telling us that they don't feel that they receive the skills and insight when they were in hospital through lactation consultants or the ongoing support of the midwives and staff. They just didn't have that opportunity to learn and develop their trust in themselves as much. So we've got callers ringing us at a much younger age of their baby. So that makes it more complicated, because we're really trying to support people intensely while they've got a baby under 1 month of age, and connect them into supports.
Wow. So on that, I guess, coming from a village point of view, like, what are the things that we can do to best support those families who are experiencing postnatal depression or even like COVID trauma, I would say?
Look, again, I think it goes back to becoming a community of care that wraps around people. I think don't be afraid to open up conversations, as we said before. If you don't have the answers, speak to each other and connect each other up to supports. I think, being that person that notices that something's not right, if you see it, call it sort of mentality, I think is just so important. And don't think that somebody else will pick it up and say it, because sometimes the next person's also thinking the same thing. I don't want to be the one that raises that this person's not looking so well, because it should be a happy time for them. Well, no, they're probably waiting for somebody to shine back the mirror and say, look, you look like you're doing it tough. Have you thought about getting some help? And then just knowing that services like ours exist, and that, as a community, you're reminding people that they're there, that we're funded by the government through taxpayers' dollar to support these people, and we love to do that, and we're specialised in doing that. So I think connecting them up, but ultimately not being afraid to have the conversations, even if you don't know where it's going to go or how to fix it.
Yeah. And again, you're not there to fix it, so you're just there to flag it. So it may just help to say, look, you don't look like that, okay? So
yeah,
when we do something about it.
Most definitely. And having those conversations save lives. We know that people can become suicidal. We know that suicide is a leading cause of maternal death, in mums. So I think, it's really important to think that for those that we don't catch, you know, there can be a really sad outcome for both the baby and for the family more broadly. So, you know, it's important that we don't leave these things and that we actually do, you know, reach out and provide that support and call it when you see it.
Yeah. And also, you know, we talked a little bit about the signs, you know, and I feel like because of COVID and because of everything that has happened, I feel like somehow you don't need to wait to see any signs. I think if you just feel that something's not quite right, there's no harm in asking for help. Like, as you said, you know, it's not going to cost anything if you reach out to PANDA or to your GP, or, you know, it may just tell you, like, actually, we've done a screen and you seem to be in the right kind of like range. So far you're okay, but it costs nothing to just check in. If there's anything you feel, you don't have to wait for the big signs, or, you know, to kind of like, oh my God, something's big is happening to me. It can be just a little gut feel.
Yeah.
And that's okay if you're actually okay. But it's better to find out whether you're okay or not than just not knowing.
Yeah, and you know, our mind is an amazing thing, but it can be our worst enemy at times. And that questioning, if there's a little flag or a little alarm going off somewhere inside of you that says, I don't think I'm doing so well, rather than leaving that and pretending it's not there, which doesn't work because your mind keeps going, maybe you're not doing well, you know, maybe you do need some help, maybe you aren't going to be a good mum, blah, 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 blah. You know, I think you're completely right. Just go nip it in the bud, go and see your GP, reach out to a helpline, or do the checklist online, you know, which has, as you said, no cost, and you're more likely to receive a better outcome quicker than letting it linger.
And, you know, I'd say as well, like, talk to your GP. I mean, my GP was fantastic. They've got such a breadth of knowledge. And they know. I mean, they've seen so many moms. And dads as well. So I guess, you know, there's information out there. So it's good to, I feel, you know, we've been isolated, we've been, you know, disconnected, and sometimes it's just good to just have one conversation to know, to be sure or not, and then you can move on to the next thing in your life. But at least, you know, it's better. I mean, I'm one of those that would say it's better to know than to imagine the worst. So
yeah, definitely.
And I guess, you know, there's something that we really wanted to touch base on today, and we kind of talked a little bit about it before. It's postnatal depression in dads. You know, that's something that is being talked more, but still it's a bit of a stigma. It's still a stigma in our society, you know, like, but I feel there's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about the struggles, about the reasons why dad would not seek for help, and how we can best support them as well.
Yeah. Look, and I think, you know, internationally, but in the Australian context, so much work's been done over the years to try and normalise the mental health experience of men. And I still think we miss the mark in terms of how we talk about that, and how we normalise it for men, you know. But and you know, that's a much bigger piece than what PANDA can do at this point in time. But I think ultimately, you know, our role, and I see my role, you know, as the lead of PANDA, to really just open up a conversation to say, again, 1 in 10 dads experience this. You know, it is a very known part of a dad's experience. And again, you know, whether you like the word normal or not, it is normal for people to be disrupted as fathers in their experience. It is, according to our data, it is completely normal to feel disengaged from your baby. It is completely normal to think that you are going to be a bad dad, you know, and self-judge yourself. That's really sad. You know, it's really sad that that's normal. But in knowing that it is okay to not feel like you're up to the task, but to give it a crack anyway, and that through giving it a crack, you're going to find a way to connect, is more important to build that hope in people than saying, you know, that there's just no way out of it. We know that, you know, regardless of the age and stage of somebody, you know, and for men, their mental health can be challenged. We put so many expectations on men and the way they have their relationships, but also the way they are the provider still in our culture. Throughout the pregnancy. And, you know, we see that in not recognising in many industries still paternity leave or paternal leave, you know, or parenting leave. We know that there are issues with men feeling that they can have that time with their babies after the birth or during, you know, the actual birth in hospital. So it has a massive impact, you know, but ultimately it's the same signs and symptoms that we would expect for women, and that is feeling disengaged, feeling worn out, feeling like you're unable to find anything, you know, of light and bright in your experience, you know, feeling like you're not able to sleep or sleeping too much, you know, feeling like you're withdrawing from all of your supports or feeling that you're overcompensating. You know, for men, we know that there can be increased drug and alcohol use. We know that, you know, men are also, you know, likely to work too much, you know, or withdraw from their workplace. And again, all those physical and psychological symptoms that are there for, you know, anyone with depression are all evident, as are anxiety symptoms as well. So that ongoing worry, not being able to sleep, you know, or waking up and then not being able to get back to sleep, are all very evident for men who are experiencing anxiety and or depression. And no, you know, depression and anxiety can co-occur for men and for women.
And I guess, you know, what I'm hearing is almost like if we knew about this, I mean, you know, I think for many moms now listening to this thinking, if I had known that it was possible for my partner to be depressed in the early ages of my child, you know, I would probably have done things a little bit differently for him as well. But we didn't know. But now we know, which is a good thing, because that will help future relationships, current and future relationships. And again, as a village, what I can see is that there is, what we can do is also to raise awareness to mothers about what can happen to their partner as well. And that's important.
Most definitely. I think the village concept is a really important one, especially when we start to think about lines of communication. And I think for, you know, we often say the easiest way to impact on men and men's awareness is through their partners. But, you know, I also think we have a responsibility to start to give men the tools and women the tools to have those conversations within their inter-village, you know, and with men speaking to their peers, their men friends, you know, or the men in their workplace. I think, you know, making that okay is really fundamentally important, and that there's no right or wrong way to have those conversations, you know. And again, if you go to the fact that from that conversation there needs to be no outcome, it's not about the outcome, it's about the journey of the conversation and the journey of escalating somebody's awareness, then the kind of reason for having the conversation is very different. It's exploratory rather than outcome focused, and that's what you want it to be when you're talking to somebody you think is struggling.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is fantastic advice. And I love what you just said about, you know, it's not about the outcome, it's about the journey of the conversation. I love that. And I think that's probably the best way we as a village can support mothers and fathers going through a tough time in the early stages of the life of a baby. So after, I know that PANDA looks after the parents for the first year. What happens after that? Where do we find, I mean, do you have any recommendation on what's next, and where do we find support post-PANDA, I guess? Is there a PANDA Plus?
Oh, look, we wish. There are so many organisations out there that help with early parenting, beyond the first year. And at the end of the day, we think that that's the most important point for people, to be connecting into their local communities. And if you've found that somebody has experienced a post or perinatal anxiety and depression, and in 12 months' time it is still there, then you really need to be getting people into localised mental health services in the form of, private allied health, or a private psychologist, or, connecting up with the many services that are there to support GPs in their practices as well. We know that people having supports in their local community is just so important. And we have a number of tools and resources for people who aren't within that first 12-month period on our website. So I'd encourage people to have a look there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julie.
Absolute pleasure.
That was really good. And sorry, I mean, I'd love to talk more and more and more. I always do that with my podcast. I need to learn to, but it's so important. I guess, we can't shorten those conversations because they're very important to have. So I'm very glad we had this conversation today, and thank you so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
And there will be more opportunities for us to connect and to do something for the moms and dads out there.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.